This is the Dreamers Podcast, where dreamers share their stories to inspire you. Now, join host Joe Pardo as he interviews a dreamer who's living their dreams.
Hey Dreamers, I'm Joe Pardo, and today I'm talking with Erik Fisher, who is making his dreams come true through podcasting. Glad to have you on the show, Erik.
Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Glad we could get together this morning and talk about podcasting, as I love podcasting, and I'm sure you do too, since you've been doing it.
Yeah, I've been doing it for a while, actually.
I've heard of your show prior, though, to running into you in one of the podcast meetup groups on Facebook. So I'm trying to think of how I heard about it, but I have heard the name before from somewhere. Probably one of the shows I was listening to before I got into podcasting.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, I've done other shows prior to this one, never as a solo show. So, you know, I still do social media segments for Cliff Ravenscraft on his podcast Answer Man show.
Oh wow, yeah, well, that's a pretty big name to be working for.
Well, I mean, he's a friend of mine. I've known him since he started on like episode 2, I think, way back when.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, why don't you start by giving some background about yourself?
Sure, yeah. Well, let's see. I'm Erik Fisher. I'm originally from Rochester, New York, in between Buffalo and Syracuse. And I am, I'm married for 12 years now. And I have a 9-year-old daughter who will be 10 in January. And a son who will be 3 in 2 weeks. So that's crazy. I've worked off and on in college admissions and social media, and I'm currently community manager for Social Media Examiner. And then I also, and you may have heard of that podcast, it's the Social Media Marketing Podcast with Michael Stelzner. He's my boss and friend. And I got into podcasting when I was doing data entry back in summer of 2005. And a little thing pops up on my Windows machine at work that says iTunes has an update. So I hit update, go use the restroom, come back, and suddenly there's this podcast icon on the left-hand side, and I'm like, what's that? So I click it, and I go through, and I'm like, oh, I get it. These are like radio shows, but you download them like songs, and then you can just play them. And I got hooked instantly, and I knew right away I could do it too, but it took a while to get into that. I actually did a comedy show with a friend of mine back in 2007. We did that off and on for a while. I still miss doing that. Cliff and I used to do a show called Social Media Serenity together. That was fun. It was all about how to do social media without going crazy doing it. At some point, January 2012, he phased that show out so he could dedicate less time to more shows and more time to fewer shows so he could, really focus and hone in on his business. And obviously that's really worked well for him. And at that point was when the solo blog or podcast desire sprung up inside me, and I knew I had to do something. So about 6 to 8 months, 8 months later, but 6 months of kind of a gestation process of the show that I currently do, Beyond the To-Do List, started growing. And at about June, I was at Blog World. It's now called New Media Expo, but I was on a panel there, and I was just talking with tons of people, and I just said, all right, I know I got to do something. And all the ideas came into place. It clicked. I knew what I wanted to do. It still took some formulating of the brand and the plan for the show, but launched it, and it's been out there now 2 years, and it's going strong.
Wow. And I mean, you release, what is it, once a week or twice a week?
Just once a week.
Once a week. I was trying to do the math in my head when I was looking at the website.
Yeah, there are, I mean, theoretically, for doing 2 years of shows, I should have, 104. I should be at about 108 or something like that right now, and I'm at like 80. And the reason is because there's been a couple different seasons where I've taken, a little bit of time off, but I don't see that happening without having shows in the can from now on. So
when I took most of this past August off, I had 40 some plus shows in the can. I just had to edit them, so I was going crazy because we went to the West Coast, and I think it was like 11 days worth of shows I had to edit minimum, and I ended up editing I think 13 just so that when I got back I wasn't killing myself trying to catch back up. Do you run into that now?
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten a lot looser on the whole editing process and figuring out what I do need to do with it, what I don't. So there's more of a post process that is less intensive on editing and more on show notes and links and just post processing the audio, which I try to do these days as soon as I can. As soon as I get done, I try to spin the file around and maybe listen through it and just pull out anything that really needs to be clipped or pulled. But other than that, I try not to touch it if I can.
Well, you seem to be pretty good at speaking, so your part probably doesn't need to get edited a whole lot.
Hey, there are lots of ums and uhs that I that drive me crazy that I do. So I don't know. I try to make the guests sound great. That's the point.
Oh, I go way out of my way to make sure the guest sounds great. The one tip that I could give to you and to other podcasters is to scrub at 1.5x or even 2x. Sometimes I'm able to get up to 2.2x depending how the guest talks.
Yeah, I kind of like that, but I also, I kind of like to hear it in the context of an actual conversation. So I don't know. It's one of those things where if I can dedicate the right amount of time to it and just zip through it and just play back and just, if something catches my ear while I'm listening to it with like my eyes closed and I'm pretending I'm a podcast listener instead of a host, or then anything that jumps out to me as a listener, that's what I'll pull or kind of just polish,
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I have to intently listen with headphones to do it at like the 2x or even sometimes 1.6, depending if it's a female who happens to talk fast because the high pitched voice already. The nice thing about that is I'm able to play back at 1x a lot more often and make those fixes that really need to be fixed and make them sound as good as possible, because I'm not spending time when they're focused on what they're saying and they know what they're saying, so I don't need to edit what they're saying. Those times it's like I could just skip over those, but I still want to hear what they're saying.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what does podcasting mean to you?
To me, it means freedom. I mean, you don't have to rely on anybody else in order to produce a piece of content that's media rich to a certain extent, and just release it and people will listen. I mean, the whole system is set up there, and even if we didn't have like iTunes or whatever, it would still be out there. It'll be a lot less clunky, or a lot more clunky, I should say, but it would still work. And in fact, it did work prior to them adding it, but their first round of really adding it to iTunes and making it, I wouldn't say they made it mainstream, because people are still saying, well, it's a resurgence, podcasting is back. And I'm like, I've been listening to podcasts since iTunes added them in 2005, and we're almost 10 years out from that now. So how is it back? I've listened to them this whole time. So I don't know. For me, it's been freedom. It's been network building. And not even in the network building idea of I need to talk to these people so that they do stuff for me. I've met friends. I've been part of community because of podcasting. So all those things come to mind.
Maybe the resurgence is really because it's talk radio at the core. Well, we all know how AM radio ended up.
Yeah, and I think obviously the other key piece to it is we've now all got these devices in our pockets that we don't have to plug in to a device. We don't have to, before, when it first started, I didn't have anything to take a podcast with me on the go. The iPod existed, obviously podcast, that's how the whole name came about, or at least sort of came about. I did not have one. Like, I had an iPod Shuffle, so I threw music on there. That first stick of gum iPod Shuffle. Still loved that thing. That was actually quite cool. But I just had all my workout music on there, so I'd, throw that in and plug it in the car, or plug it in and go walk or go on the treadmill or whatever. But I wanted to listen to podcasts, but I just didn't have a device that would do that. But fast forward, we now have it to where you don't have to download your shows to a computer, plug a device up to the computer through a cable, then have to sync them over and everything. We've got these computers in our pockets now, and apparently soon on our wrists, where you can plug headphones in, or You don't even need to. It's got a speaker built into it. So you could totally hit play and listen to podcasts and have it come out this speaker of this portable little computer slash Walkman slash whatever hybrid you want to call it of these smartphones these days. And so because we've gotten to that point, and because that kind of happened and kind of became mass adopted and affordable back in, 09, 2010, that's when we started to see the seeds planted again of this resurgence, so to speak. So
will you be buying an Apple Watch?
That's a good question. I was actually going to see if I couldn't rattle off through speaking and dictation on my computer today a quick little blog post saying why you don't need a smartwatch. So because I've been wearing a regular watch. I think it's funny that the company that got us to stop wearing watches to check the time, because we had it on our phone and you just pull it out and check it on your phone, is now trying to sell us a watch. And for me, I stopped wearing, I hadn't been wearing a watch for a while, and I check the time on my phone all the time. So then I realized, wait a second, I'm grabbing my phone to check the time all the time, and then it's enticing me with that little glowing swipe to open that just says, oh, there might be stuff, there might be email, there might be tweets. And so I started wearing a regular watch about 2 years ago so that I could just hold my wrist up, see the time, and then put my wrist back down without ever grabbing my phone. I don't know that I want to go to the point where I can see who's calling me on my phone or calendar appointments and all that kind of stuff. Theoretically, that's going to just make you so much more productive. But when I reach and look to see the time or there'd be certain alerts probably it'd be cool to do. But I don't know that I want to go there yet. I don't know that we all need to be that connected.
See, me, I don't no watch.
Yeah.
And I don't care to have stuff on my wrist. I do a lot of typing, and it bothers my wrist. In fact, I can't even type with my wedding ring on because it bothers me.
Yeah.
They made a pretty darn compelling argument of why I should get one.
See, I don't disagree that it was cool. I just don't know that it's smart for me to have a smart watch.
When I was watching the conference on my TV, of course, that kept freezing because there was all kinds of problems with
I gave
the
up
video.
on that.
I switched to my laptop and was going back and forth with MacRumors.com and the video on their site on my laptop. And for me, it was... I'm like, man, do I really need another screen? I was like, I got my MacBook Pro Retina. I'm sitting in my living room. My Apple TV's in front of me. My iPad Air is right next to me. My iPhone's sitting next to that. How many things do I need with screens to be connected? I was like, but I don't like the crux of the whole thing is I really don't like having things on my wrist. It doesn't matter if it's a Fitbit or when I go to Disney World, which I tend to go a lot. The whole Magic Band thing not happening for me. It's just not comfortable.
Yep.
So I'll give it a shot. I'll go in the store. I'll put one on and be like, oh, this is, how does this work as far as how well does the swiping and the was it the crown, digital crown?
Yeah, digital crown.
How well does all that work? But at the end of the day, if I don't feel comfortable having it on my wrist, $350 is a lot of money to spend on something that I might only wind up using once in a while.
Yeah. Well, and see, that right there, that price point is more than the phone that I need to upgrade to. And catch what I said just there, need to upgrade to, which is totally not true. So, yeah, yesterday was a very technical or digital existential crisis for me, thinking, what do I need? Well, I know what I want, but what do I really need, So
definitely. Yeah. So, with all that said, let's move to something that has nothing to do with any of that. What would you say inspires you?
Generosity. That just inspires me. When I see people helping or giving, especially when they don't know that I see them doing it, that's awesome. So try to do that. I try not to... and I probably fail at it all the time, but that would be my goal. That would be my aim, would be... that I'm inspired by that. I love I've seen people do that so many times. I even tweeted this the other day. I was thinking about it and I was like, what would it look like, or what would it be like if you did something to help somebody else and didn't do it because you had this expectation of reciprocity, where you didn't do it in order to gain, appeal or favor in that person's eyes, expecting down the road, if I help enough people, they'll help me back, you know? Like, really? I mean, I get it. Like, here's the thing. I've argued with people before about when you do something helpful to somebody else, it's still kind of selfish to yourself because you feel good doing it, you know? And those good feelings are good for you, not for them. So it's still slightly selfish. But the fun thing is that even less selfish thing to do is to do it when nobody else can know that you did it. You know, when you do it for no other reason other than that one thing that it makes you feel good and it makes the other person feel good. You know, if you do it, in other words, doing something good for somebody else, helping them without looking to get anything back from it, that's when, strangely enough, you get a lot more of that back anyway, when you don't make it a strategy, you know?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I live in South Jersey, as many of the audience must know by now. And I tend to hold doors for people. And the reason is because I think they could make a difference for somebody that might not have, you know, be having a crappy day or something like that. And it's like, you know, just to go out of my way to do something as little as that could change their entire day. But I was down in Atlantic City and somebody held the door for me and promptly started asking for a tip. And they didn't work there. It was nothing. And I'm like, really, dude? Like, I'll hold the door for like 15 people and catch up to my party after the fact. I've done it plenty of times. Because once you get started, you can't stop.
Yep.
Usually. I mean, unless we're in a hurry, like, unless I'm in a hurry, like, oh no, my movie's about to start, I'll hold the door and kind of like pass it off to the person that's behind me instead of standing at the opening of the doorway holding it. So it's things like that. It's like, you know, you do things to make other people's day. You know, another great example of that is, and this is kind of like a twofold. And I like what you said about how it's almost selfish doing nice things for people, even if nobody else notices.
Right. Yeah.
I tend to park far away, and the reason is because my legs work. Sure, there's plenty of people who might need a handicap sticker and a parking spot, and that's great. But there's plenty of people who are going through problems every single day and can't walk as well, you know, back problems, and they don't have those handicap stickers. So to me, it's like, hey, if I can walk, because there's days where my lower back is hurting and I can't walk. So it's kind of like paying it forward, even though no one notices. Well, except like the people I'm with, and like, why are you parking so far away? And I'm like, because I can walk.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
It's not pouring rain outside. It's not, you know, it's a nice day out or whatever, and taking a few extra steps is supposed to be good for you, so what the heck?
Right. Do it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, you know, if I can walk, why not? I mean, there's days where I can't walk. My lower back's all screwed up, and I had trouble getting out of my car, but those are the days where maybe I will park a little closer. It depends. It also depends how crowded it is, how many spots are available at the time.
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that. But generally, yeah, I try to park nice and far away. I actually broke up with somebody over that.
That's hilarious.
Parking far away. They got so upset with me, and I'm like, I'm just trying to do a nice thing for people who don't even realize that I'm doing it. Like, that's insane. I was like, I don't think that this can go on.
Yeah.
So, how was your dream of podcasting received by your family?
That's interesting. Yeah, I think my wife thought, yeah, that's just the thing you do sometimes. Back when I first started doing it, you know, she thought, yeah, that's funny. You know, she'd listen to maybe one or two that back when I was doing the comedy stuff, because, you know, she's like, yeah, that's all right. That's not, and it's fun. There's nothing worse than doing a show that's supposed to be funny and your wife being like, yeah, that's kind of funny, you know. But she has listened to a number of at least the early and some of the mid episodes of the current podcast, and, you know, she's liked them. She's been good with that. My son, he has no clue what I do with that, and my daughter, she knows that I've been on shows and things like that. She just I don't think it occurs to her. Yeah, but my wife, I mean, my wife appreciates that I've been able to have, this is not why I do it, but she appreciates that I've been able to have sponsors and things on the show, and that, you know, my car is paid off because of it, stuff like that.
Being able to pay your car off,
right?
I mean, that's phenomenal, man.
Yeah.
You know, you hear the stories, you're like, oh, I just wanted to pay my bills. I mean, that's That's my story. That's my story. I just want to
Right.
be able to pay my bills. And not that I'm even doing, I mean, right now I'm making no money. You can check that all out at, if you go to howtodream.co and look at the top, it says income and stats. There's no money coming in. So this is all out of, I don't know about just goodness, but like right now it's all out of speculation. Is that fair to say? Speculation?
Yeah. You're doing it pro bono.
But at some point, you know, I'm trying to, this is basically me making my case to the jury of why I should be able to podcast all the time and blog and
Right.
be able to make a living. You know, I don't need hundreds of thousands of dollars a month or anything like that. I just
Right.
want to pay my bills.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing for a lot of people who hear about podcasting these days is they come into it thinking it has to be some business model that has to crank into an entrepreneurial venture that is going to return, you know, their monetary investment tenfold within a couple of months or even a year. And what they don't realize is you can live, or you can have a nice living and live comfortably with doing just a show that you're super passionate about, and you find the right people who will either, that are fans or that will support you, or sponsors that want to reach those fans, for example. Again, when I said I paid my car off, like, that car was a used car, so it already wasn't like a huge sum of money, and we'd been paying on that thing for a few years already. And so it was nice to just get a nice check and be able to say, oh, you know what? This will more than cross that debt off our ledger. Let's do it. Nice. And we did it, you know? So you don't have to be a superstar. You don't have to be, you know, a millionaire podcaster. You can just have fun with this new medium and learn and try it and grow and be part of the community without having it have to be a business even. You can do it completely for fun. I enjoy doing it more when I look at it from that angle than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely got to enjoy it. To just get into it for the sake of like, oh, this is where the gold rush is right now.
Right.
You know, that's definitely not the way to look at it. And you got to find something that you're passionate about and can come up with enough material for. I mean, that's one of the reasons I do interview shows. So what steps did you take to get started when you got started in podcasting?
Well, again, and when my friend and I started, we didn't go with like super awesome, you know, $200-$300 or more microphones. We were using $50 microphones. Even then, that was a pretty big investment to pay $50 times two. And I mean, I owned all the equipment. I had a little soundboard. Actually, I still have that. You know, we'd set up in a spare bedroom in his house, and on our lunch hour, we'd just drive there and we'd have an hour and we'd record and we'd just mess around and record it. And I mean, it was kind of like a late night talk show. So, you know, we did our research. We kind of checked the internet for cool stuff to talk about. We figured out how to get our recording to, you know, our theme song to play in. We recorded the whole thing live. Like, we tried, I think we almost got away without editing for the most part. And that was actually kind of cool, was to just hit play. The theme song played. We'd say, hey, this is us. And, you know, we'd do the intro, and we'd then hit sound cues that I played off my iPod. It was so, you wouldn't even believe. Like, it was just so I mean, it was complicated, but it was so not complicated at the same time. And we weren't thinking, oh yeah, we're going to be rich. Oh yeah, this is going to be awesome. I mean, we wanted lots of followers and fans and all that kind of stuff. This was, you know, right at the cusp of Facebook going public with more than just college students being allowed to use it. You know, we had no idea. We had no idea what the possibilities were. I mean, I approached it all differently the second time, you know, third time around, I should say. But yeah, I mean, it just, you know, it was equipment. It was pushing it out there, and it was just seeing who liked it. And that was it. Like, there wasn't a lot of thought into it that first time around. So,
I mean, at this point, that was many years ago.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
And that's great. I was going to use the word convoluted because now with editing and everything, you could easily pipe all that stuff in, all, you know, sound cues and stuff like that after the fact if you really wanted to. But that's just, I think that's great that you guys were so dedicated to this idea that you were willing to come up with not complicated ways, but, you know, going out of your way to figure out ways to make it happen.
The thing is that we didn't know anything. So we didn't have the ability ability to overcomplicate it. We didn't know anything, so it was literally like, well, how do we get sound to come into this soundboard so that we hear it and it goes out to the recorder? Well, what if on your iPod the sound files are there and it comes into the soundboard out of the headphone jack there, and then on my iPod where I've got the recorder hooked into from the soundboard, I hit record and then we just go. And it was just like, hey, cool. So it was literally one iPod playing sound clips into a soundboard where we had mics and headphone sets, and then that all coming out from the soundboard into another iPod. It was nuts, but it worked.
Well, before I get into the next question, which is about your biggest roadblock that you've hit, I'm curious as to how many shows have you done over the years?
I'll tell you what, with the first show, we did probably about 80 shows, and then we did it again for a while and did about 20. So maybe about 100 with that one. And then with the show I did with Cliff prior to that, or after that, I should say, that was about 120, 130. So there, you're already talking about 230. So then you add that to like the 80 that I have on my current show. I mean, you're talking 300 plus, somewhere around there.
Oh, I meant actual, like, not episodes. I meant
episodes,
shows,
but
yeah.
Individual podcasts.
Well, yeah, like where you started something and then, because my next question would be, how did you go about ending them? Did you just end them like, that's it? It's a dead feed, or?
I'll say this. I've gotten better at ending stuff every single time I've done it. The first time around, it was just kind of a, hey, we really don't know. We can't really do this anymore. Oh, well, we didn't plan on ending, so we just kind of faded. And then we came back, and then that faded. And then the thing with Cliff, he had a plan, so I wasn't calling the shots on that one ending, but it was the right decision. And then I've not ended this show, and I don't plan on it, actually. I really like doing it. I can see it going for years. So
yeah, I mean, with interviews, there's always going to be somebody else to interview, especially at the pace that you're going at, one a week.
Yeah.
I mean, that's very maintainable.
Yep. And there's always more to learn. That's kind of the key for me, is just the show is very much a learning process for me, the host, as well. Not just about podcasting better, but more so learning from the guests. And so I don't see that ending ever. Obviously, I don't know that I'm going to do this show for, 5-6 years, probably like 2 to 3, maybe a little more than that. Maybe there'll be some other show that gets added and then that takes over. I don't know. Who knows? It's all, hey, you got to have more dreams. So
yeah, I mean, learning is all about why I'm here. I want to learn. I'm curious about how people in different fields learn. I mean, I'm not sure if you know, but the show, I'm constantly having a different guest from a different background, from a different field, from a different part of the world. Whether it's being an author or, blogger, podcaster, DJ, musician, artist, graphic artist, sports, some involved with sports, whether it's in the front office or in journalism or runners, people that suffer with illnesses. There's always something else that I can learn. And that was a great thing when I came up with the show is, hey, if I can figure out a way to get, as many people on the show as possible, there's always going to be something else for somebody else. And at the same time, I get to learn about what it's like to be working at the top of a minor league hockey league, and what it's like to go through the process of becoming and the roadblocks that you hit along the way and all that. So, learning is really why I'm here.
Yeah. That's great.
So I'd like to learn, what are the biggest roadblocks you've hit so far?
I think one of the biggest roadblocks for me has been just, honestly, sometimes our ambition gets ahead of our reality. And that's not to say we shouldn't dream or dream big in order to change our reality, but you've got to sometimes not overstep your bounds or overreach the resources that you have available to you at any given moment. So I think, for example, I know that, and this is all stuff I've learned from doing it. My roadblocks have been allowing enough time to be set aside for the show to be produced weekly consistently. Like I said, I've taken some time off here and there. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but I'd love for there to be a way for the show to be out there while I am taking a break. So, that's every podcaster's dream, is to continue to have content out there for new listeners to find and old listeners to enjoy while you get to take a break and maybe focus on something else like a book or something. So I think that the biggest roadblocks have been that. I think the biggest another roadblock has been just getting caught up in the statistics or the pseudo competition of ranking your show against other shows. And somebody yesterday, it was funny, yesterday my co-writer and I of my 2 books, we were talking to somebody else who was interviewing us, and then after the interview we were giving him, he was asking us for some advice, and he asked me point blank, he said, well, what shows are your competition? And I flat out said, I don't have any. And that wasn't a cocky thing to say. It was I don't look at anybody as competition, because there is no competition. I'm not competing against anybody. I'm making my own show my own way for the listeners, my own listeners, to enjoy it. And they can listen to me and or anybody else, and that's fine. But I'm not going to let, competition dictate how I make my decisions. And that's not to say you don't do your decisions strategically and do them the right way to be better found and all that kind of stuff. But when you let competition, drive you, and it's not a competition against yourself to do better than you did before, then, you end up getting depressed or bogged down in, why am I not better? Why is my show not higher? Why, and when you dwell on that comparison and that competition, you do worse work. So I quit doing that.
Would you like to elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, I don't know. What else do you want to know about it? Because I could go on. How
did you go about quitting, not worrying about it? I mean, it's something I struggle with myself. Not so much the rankings or whatever. I was fortunate enough to have the show on New and Noteworthy for much of the time that it was allowed to be on New and Noteworthy, and it was exciting every day. It was like, oh, look where I'm at now. And 6 hours later, I'd be a little bit back. And then in 6 hours from then, I'd be further up. And, it's fun because it's like watching like a horse race or really any kind of competition. And I'm a pretty competitive person to begin with. It's always more fun when there's competition rather than just playing for the heck of it.
Well, so I can step in there. I can say this. One of the things that helped me stop, here's a saying that I made up for my podcast movement session when I was speaking. I said, stop worrying about the rankings in iTunes and worry about the ranking of your show in your audience's mind. So in other words, put out good shows. Don't worry about putting out shows to get them seen higher in the rankings. Put them out there so that your audience can't help but shoot you an email and say, thank you for this show. And when that starts happening, like it has happened for me, then you're doing a good show. And you don't need to see your show high up. I mean, my show does still, in top of the business category, I don't know, last time I checked, it was in somewhere in the top 20. And that's great, but it doesn't mean anything unless I know people are really listening and enjoying it. And I get those emails, I get those tweets. That's what I do it for.
Yeah, I can't echo that enough. I mean, getting my first email and then the second email and constantly getting emails from my listeners about how great the show is. There's really not too many things that top that feeling that you touch somebody's life that is halfway around the world and they're like,
yeah.
This really spoke to me and they want to get to know more about me, and it's a really beautiful feeling that comes with the territory.
Yeah, totally. And I think podcasting again is one of those mediums that really allows for that because of the intimacy of listening to someone, for the most part in your ears. Regardless in your ears, that's what you listen with. But I mean, like, whether you've got speakers turned on or you've literally got speakers in earbuds or headphones in your ears, you've got them in your ears instead of, so you hear their voice, you hear the warmth, you feel like they're almost talking inside your head. And so it creates that, oh, I know you feeling, much quicker than I think other mediums do. Even video, when you can see the person and see physical, nonverbal communication along with the verbal. So,
video is something that I've been meaning to dabble with, but it makes things all that more complicated. But it's something I do plan on getting around to. And hopefully by the time this episode comes out, I'll have already dabbled in it and we will know how horrible it is.
Yeah, and video's cool. I mean, it's a whole other animal. There's so much more you have to get right for video for it to work. Audio, you eliminate that whole dimension, and now it just needs to sound good instead of look good and not be awkward at times and have great editing and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you do edit with audio too, but you see what I'm saying? Like, there's so much much more that could go wrong with video, and there's a whole other style of person that is a viewer versus a listener. So I see myself doing some video too in the future. In fact, I've got an interview that I'm going to do that's going to be video coming up, but mostly because it's going to be one of my better, bigger, better interviews coming up. And I want to make sure to have that out there on YouTube for people that'll search for this person's name. So,
so you mentioned that you have 2 books. Would you like to elaborate on those?
Sure, yeah. They're ebooks. They're on Kindle. You can grab those now. They're the first one, and I co-authored them. The first one is called Ready, Aim, Fire: A Practical Guide to Setting and Achieving Goals. And the second one is actually just out this week. And well, I mean, in whenever this is released, it'll have been a while, but it's out now. It's the follow-up, and it's called Hit the Mark. It's about boosting your energy, increasing your focus, and managing your time. So if the first one's all about figuring out what you should be doing, the second one is all about how to do it more or better.
So when you say, hey, I paid off my car, did the first book factor into that?
Yeah, that factored in. That's for sure. I think there was definitely payments that were able to be checked off because of that. And now, obviously, since I have a co-author, it's not all my money. So, and Amazon takes their cut first. But the first book did fairly well. We did some strategic communication comparisons with some other authors that we knew, and they confirmed, yeah, you guys, that did pretty good for a self-published book. And so the second one's out there now, and it's actually a much better book. It's actually fewer pages but has more words, because I read the audiobook for both of them, and that you get free with each of those. And the second one, it's longer. It's a longer audiobook than the first one, even though the first one has more pages. It's because the first one's broken up into more concise, almost daily reader type sections where you could read a piece at a time and just kind of gain daily momentum towards dreaming bigger and making better goals and then achieving them.
Me being a learner, you could tell me how you read an audiobook.
Well, I mean, I recorded it, I should say.
Oh. Did you actually recorded it yourself?
Yep. Yeah. Just
cool.
recorded the whole thing and processed it and, uploaded the file, and there's a link to both those audiobooks in each respective book at the back of the book. So, you grab it on Amazon and you download that thing, and you can, open it up right on what's great about Amazon, and I kind of love it this way, is they have a reader for any device out there, Windows, Mac, tablet, phone, whatever. You download that app, and then you can go to the back of the book and click the link, and it'll, preferably, if you're going to listen to it on something, like you want to literally download the file and own it somewhere, have it saved somewhere, do it on a desktop or a laptop or something, with the free Kindle app that way. But yeah, you can download it and you can listen to it, and it's me reading it. It's, this voice right here.
Sounds sexy.
Yeah. So yeah, you can go grab those. You can throw show notes, or you can throw links to those in the show notes if you want. That'll be cool.
Yeah, I'll throw show notes at it.
Nice.
So what's your biggest disappointment so far of podcasting?
That's interesting. I think that That is an interesting question. I have not thought about that. I think that, again, probably my biggest disappointment was probably a self-imposed or an unrealistic expectation. Like, man, why isn't this show taking off even further? Or why is my show not in the number one slot even for like 1 second? Why, it's been number two, but why can't I push it to number one? It's good enough. I made it. I know it's good. That kind of thing.
My mom said it was good.
Yeah, my mom likes my show. And the thing is that I can be disappointed about that, but then if I change my perspective, it's not disappointing anymore. So I'm kind of over it. Like I said before, I mean, it attaches right to that previous roadblock of looking at things from the wrong perspective. That holds you back, and you can be disappointed about it. But I mean, that's the thing. I've talked to my son or my daughter, and it's like, hey, you got to go eat out at a really cool restaurant. We didn't get to go to this one other store that you wanted to, or play on this playground or whatever. So yeah, you're disappointed, but only because of the way you're looking at things. You're looking at it negatively instead of positively. You got to go swim in a pool at a hotel. You got to eat out at this great restaurant and have food that you loved. And now you're focusing on the wrong thing, of something you didn't get or didn't get to do, so you're disappointed. So what's it going to take to change your perspective? So that's me talking, and so then I flip that and it's like, oh, okay, I parent myself, and I'm like, I've been disappointed in the past, but I don't have those anymore in terms of so I guess there's my answer. I don't have any biggest disappointments anymore, even though I did about podcasting.
No, I think that's a great way. I hope your kids see it that way.
I wish they would too.
Oh, they'll get there.
Yeah.
So what was your childhood dream?
Well, what's funny was I used to carry around my grandfather actually had a recorder, and he would stick a microphone in front of us and we'd talk and pretend we were on the radio. So I didn't remember that for a long time. So I guess I've always wanted to podcast and didn't know it. And I always was one of those people who would listen to the radio and have a tape in and then would hit record when I wanted to like record my favorite songs. So yeah, I was always and then also would play around with video camcorder type stuff and also superheroes. So, this whole mix of, digital and audio and analog, like I said, like, hey, if I'd known YouTube was going to be a thing, I would have really practiced doing videos for a while after I had already learned to in college, when, editing on a Mac and video editing and all that. So yeah, I guess my dream has always been to just create cool stuff with technology, and I'm doing it.
It's funny. I mean, I remember doing very similar things with some of my friends around here, recording like radio type shows and, putting in tapes. I wish I could find those tapes. I don't think I have them. I think they actually have them, but if they even have them anymore. But this just would be awesome to go back and actually listen to the crap that we put together. Together that sounded so great at the time.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you.
So, could you share a favorite memory from podcasting?
Man, there was a lot of I'll say this, my friend, we aren't really in touch now because he lives out in California, and with the time difference and just changes in our lives and seasons. The guy I knew from even back home, we used to do the comedy show together. I guess I slightly nostalgically miss just hanging out with him, but I also loved just the stuff we came up with on the top of our heads that we recorded. And I actually have a bunch of those still saved, so I actually can go back and listen to them. And I actually thought I might go through and like cut together like a super mix or super cut of the best of the best stuff. I mean, we would actually play a karaoke song, so the lyrics weren't there, but we'd make up different lyrics. We'd almost do Weird Al type stuff once in a while, and we'd play it. And like, for example, we did a parody of Don't Stop Believing from Journey, but it was Don't Stop Your Tweeting, and it was all about geeky things that people do. And yeah, man, I miss doing that. I miss having fun with that. And again, that wasn't for money. It was just for fun. And it was just, I mean, it gave you that feeling of, wow, I made that and we made that and people like it. I love doing it. I miss doing that. That's one of those things I still feel like there's more to podcasting coming from me soon that'll be out there like that. So
Well, if you're looking for somebody to have fun with, I'm available.
yeah.
I love Weird Al, man. He's great. He's fantastic. I almost wish he put out more stuff.
Right.
Like every year he should have an album. It's a shame that it takes so long for albums to come out for him. So what do your dreams for the future look like?
I kind of like pacing and scaling where I'm at right now. Like, I love the fact that, we just paid off the car. In fact, I didn't add this in there, but it was kind of tied in with, we paid off the new furnace that we had to put in this past winter. So that stuff's taken on, like that stuff's crossed off the list. It's like, oh, well, let's make the list and let's just start crossing stuff off. Let's, really focus in on, here are the things we want to do. Here's, we want to get debt free where we can have the freedom to just go anywhere, do anything, keep doing the shows. I've got tons of interesting guests and friends that are going to come on, and more book ideas, and just continue doing it. And meantime, there's no pressure for any of that stuff to have to deliver some weird expectation of just raking in the dough and laying on a bed of dollars bills. It's hey, the priority here is let's deepen our roots as a family. Let's spend quality time together. Let's make sure that that's always growing and consistent, and have a good life now and not just wait for it. And having that good life now does not require money, even though it's coming in and we're chipping away at, I'd love to, at this point we'll sell the house, get a different place, better place, maybe rent, pay off all our debt and my school loans from back when, and have nothing. When we don't owe anybody anything, we can do anything we want to. So that's kind of the dream.
I think that's a great way to look at it. So, you still have a full-time job?
Yeah, I switched full-time jobs. My full-time job is now working at home, not on my own stuff, but on stuff for Social Media Examiner. I'm community manager there. So I sit at my desk for most of the day, and I'd vary it up. I'll grab my iPad and I'll stand up and I'll pace around the dinner table so that I'm getting my Fitbit steps in, or outside if it's not raining like it is right now, and or go to coffee shops when I need to get out of the house because the kids are home from school. But that's the deal. Like, I'm working from home. I'm not commuting to an office every day. My office is already here, so that's it. I'm thinking of social media strategy and implementation all day long, and then doing it.
That's definitely the life. I've been working from home for a while now. It hasn't gotten tiring yet. Is it hard to stay motivated some days?
Well, yeah. That's the thing is, unless my family is here, which today is one of those 3 days out of the week where for the majority of the day, it's me and the dog. So it can be, but I leave Skype open. I have, water. I don't have water cooler meetings as much these days. It's more, that's what Twitter's for. So, I'll pace myself and say, okay, I got this, and this done. I would get up and go get a coffee or whatever. Let me open my phone while I do that. I'll stand in or I'll give somebody a call. And honestly, it just it's a whole different lifestyle, working lifestyle, I guess I should say. And so you get used to it. After a while, you start to figure out, oh, you know what? I'm not socially interacting with anybody. That's not healthy. I should start doing that now, So it's always nice I'm glad you called. I really needed to talk to somebody, Joe. So it gets to feel that way once in a while, but I've been aware. I've had awareness or whatever of different needs, and start to figure out, oh, okay, yeah, it's probably a good thing I don't sit in front of a computer and not get up and not talk to anybody for days on end. How can I remedy that? And then you do. So
see, I don't know about you, but all my neighbors are all retired. So they're home like all day long, and they sit on the porch across the street, and I'll go over there and have an iced tea, and they're all usually drinking throughout the day. But I go over there, and it's like, it's interesting. It's funny though, is because they're all retired. When I said, hey, I'm starting a podcast, they said, a what?
Nice.
And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna try to make this work and try to pay my bills doing this instead. And they were like, yeah, I think you need to go get a job.
That's great.
Is there any last thoughts you'd like to share, Erik?
The thing I've really learned is, and again, I forget this, but I try to remember it as often as I can, is this idea of removing the word impossible from your vocabulary. Because, and this is actually ironic, because last night I was looking through the liner notes of, and this will tell you when it came out, the brand new U2 album that was given out free to everybody on iTunes. I was looking through the liner notes digitally on the PDF, and in the back it's got this quote from Nelson Mandela, and it says, it always looks impossible until you've done it. And so that just kind of, that plays on that thing. I've been saying that, remove the word impossible from your vocabulary for a while. That quote there from Mandela that I was not aware of, or maybe only was subconsciously aware of, reiterates or reinforces that, or even says it better to some extent, things always seem impossible until you do them. When you do it, then it's like, oh, then what else seems impossible that now I'll do as well?
Yeah, I think that's a great quote to end with, because you can always look at the negative, and it's real easy to look at the negative, and I do it myself. I'm just as I'm sure you do. But removing the word impossible, it definitely takes some practice and some wins to get that kind of confidence. But I mean, that doesn't make it any less difficult. There's in my opinion, there's definitely a difference between impossible and difficult. And just because something's difficult doesn't mean it's not worth doing or impossible at the same time.
Yeah, and I think even some of those things that we don't think are impossible, we only look at them as difficult, but then we struggle with the difficulty as we're doing it. There'll be that momentary time where it's like, man, I don't know if this is even going to happen or going to work. And we wouldn't probably use the word impossible, but our emotions feel like it's impossible. So, but working through it, yeah, we get there. We get there.
So I would love for you to plug your websites and how people can connect with you.
Sure, yeah. Hop over to beyondthetodolist.com. That's where my show can be found. And you can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/Erik with a K, the letter J, Fisher. And from there, Twitter and Facebook, or not, sorry. From the site there, you can find all my social stuff, from my Twitter as well. And if you're interested in the books, they're beyondthetodolist.com/goals and beyondthetodolist.com/focus.
Awesome. Well, I'll have them all in the show notes at howtodream.co, and everybody can connect with you. And I hope that they do, because it's been a fabulous interview. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and tell us about your dreams and how other people can help make them real.
Yeah, Joe, it's been great talking with you. I'm glad that you asked me to come on the show. It's been great.
Well, thank you again, and I'd hope to have you on the show in 6 months or to a year, and we'll follow up on how everything's been going for you.
Awesome, yeah. Just let me know.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Dreamers Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Dreamers Podcast. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Dreamers Podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the Dreamers Podcast, please send an email to j@jpar.co. This podcast is copyright 2014 by jpar.co.
Today's background music's been provided by Tom Amin. You can check out more about Tom Amin at tomaminmusic.com.